and I became a pure bookkeeping licensee, I think about 3 years ago. And that has really helped as well because it's given me a lot of structure around the growth and around the procedures and documentation so that I have the systems in place to recruit new people and bring on new clients as well.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be another great one. Our guest is the successful bookkeeping business owner of Harrop-Scott and Associates, which has been operating since 2010. She empowers business owners to make financial decisions by providing impeccable books, detailed reports, and analysis. She's also passionate about enterprise development and loves helping medical, legal, real estate, IT, and creative professionals grow their business. Siobhan Harrop-Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you, and I know your business is a busy one and it's very active, and so having you on the show and giving us this time is very much appreciated.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to do it. I'm so appreciative of the Pure Bookkeeping community.
Thank you. And we're appreciative of you. And now, Siobhan, before we get started, can you let us know a little bit about your career background that has led you up to this point?
Sure. So I actually started a bookkeeping business in 2000, and I was unincorporated for the first 10 years. And I started out by myself. I had a main client who was an accountant, and she had her own business running training programs for people who wanted to become accountants. And I was her administrator as well as her bookkeeper. I did some marketing for her, and that was my start. And then she referred me to some other accountants that she knew, and my business grew from there. I started out with a couple of other clients and then eventually gained, probably by year 5, I had about 20 or 30 clients, and I had my first couple of people working with me. I brought on some friends, people that I had met who were doing bookkeeping, and they helped me take on clients in locations that I couldn't get to or when the work became too much. And it just grew from there. And eventually I started hiring people that I didn't know. And then in 2010, I incorporated and started hiring employees. And I've got a benefits plan now and E&O insurance and all kinds of other things. An actual client of mine started my original website, and then we paid somebody to develop a whole new and improved website, and we've got pictures and testimonials on there. So the business just kept evolving. It kept growing. And I became a pure bookkeeping licensee, I think about 3 years ago. And that has really helped as well because it's given me a lot of structure around the growth and around the procedures and documentation so that I have the systems in place to recruit new people and bring on new clients as well.
Beautiful. It's quite a journey and one that is, common in that you start off, well, obviously small and maybe didn't even anticipate having your own business. Did you think that you would have a business when you first got started?
I certainly didn't imagine it would grow to what it's grown to. No, I didn't. In the beginning, I thought, okay, well, I'll make some money so that I can be self-employed and have flexible hours. And then, I had no idea.
It's amazing. It's great. Always great to hear. And I know your business, and I know that it's going well, and you provide jobs for people. You provide information to business owners to help them build their business. And so it's just interesting to watch how it started out as just being able to have, somewhat of a self-directed, I don't want to say selfish, but thinking of the word here, but it's, you wanted a job that had freedom and flexibility and make some money. But now your business has grown and you're actually providing that for other people, which is
correct.
Which is kind of interesting, right? And probably have less freedom and flexibility because your business has grown. So it's always interesting to hear someone's journey from the start point. If looking back, Siobhan, if you could do it all again, would you change anything?
I don't think so. No, I really don't think so. It evolved. Everything evolved naturally. I guess it wouldn't have hurt to be more informed when I was starting out regarding some systems that I could put in place, but I'm pretty pleased with what I did. Like just naturally, when I added clients, I documented procedures and made sure that we had a database in Excel of what their deadlines were, because I knew in the back of my mind, if I can't make it, then Catherine might go out and do this client for me, or Martha might go out and do this client. So, yeah, I mean, if anything, I wouldn't do anything differently. I think it's great when people starting out have the support of Pure Bookkeeping, because then they can learn the things that I learned later on. They can learn it earlier in their growth.
Yes, which is great. And I think it's also an interesting question, and I'm glad that you brought it up, which is, being more informed. And I think that's part of what we do as a podcast and our book and the work that we do is to bring as much information to people who are at every level of their business, whether they're just getting started or even thinking about just getting started, right up to having multiple employees and what's next. So it's always that more information is always helpful when you're trying to make decisions in your own business and design where you're trying to get to. Was there a specific area that you would have wished you'd had more information?
Probably regarding hiring would be one area, and hiring and pricing. Yeah.
So
pricing services.
Hiring and pricing. And now looking back, what would you say to someone? Where should they go looking if they're sitting there going, okay, well, I should probably educate myself around hiring and pricing? What would be your recommendations?
Well, the Pure Bookkeeping HR system is fantastic. The testing that's available, the QuickBooks test, the Sage test, and all the materials, the interview questions, the forms that you can use for phone interview, in-person interview, the forms that you can use to mark the tests and mark your own performance during an interview, the Excel templates that you can use for gathering information about your staff are all really helpful. Mm. Yeah, for the pricing, I'm getting information from a lot of different sources regarding pricing, and
I think I think that one is a massive conversation. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what has been a challenge for you and where you've gone, the different places you've gone, because this is a question I almost get it daily around pricing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the starting point for me was figuring out what other people were charging or what I could expect to charge in the market. And I started out at a relatively low rate. Initially, I was $12 an hour back in 2000. And I was doing mostly administrative tasks at that time. And then I increased myself gradually to $18 an hour when I was doing the administration and bookkeeping for my original client. And then I started thinking about, I should do some research to see what other bookkeepers are charging. And I expanded my practice and started charging in the sort of $20 to $25 range. And then I did more research and realized, hey, wait a second, there's people charging $30 to $40 an hour. and then I at the same time, I was taking courses at colleges. I was initially living downtown and taking courses at George Brown, and then I moved to North York and started taking courses at Seneca, because I wanted to make sure that if I was charging higher rates, that I also had the education to back me up, which is also where pure bookkeeping comes in, because you can get certified through pure bookkeeping, and then you've got a certain standard. And you can do it through IPBC and there are some other national organizations, but IPBC is the premier one. So along with pricing, you want to make sure that you've got the education and so that you can deliver the quality of work that people are going to be expecting at higher rates. Because people don't have a problem paying somebody $15 an hour to do administrative stuff, and they're not expecting the same skill level as they are when they're paying somebody $40 an hour or higher, as I'm now charging. And yeah, so I did some market research, and then even later, that original market research was probably back in 2005, and then even later, in 2010 to now, then I started, I was attending more conferences. I didn't really have a full-time membership with IPBC until I think 2010. And I started going to the Intuit conferences, and then I became very much aware of pricing, and I started to charge higher rates. I started getting up into the $50, $60, $70 an hour for myself and my staff. And then I started to hear about value pricing and pricing flat rate billings per month, and that's something that I'm still learning right now.
It's common. A lot of folks are looking at fixed and value pricing, and it's a big conversation. We've had both Ron Baker and Mark Wickersham on the podcast, and I think it's one of those ones that does require a lot of research, a lot of education and training to be able to master it, because it's not as simple as just step 1, step 2, step 3. There's lots of levels and intricacies to that conversation. But what I hear from what you're saying is that you started very low, and then you built up your confidence, and you looked at the marketplace, and now you're shifting more to value. But all the way through, it's about valuing your own time, your own, and yourself, and what it is that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to charge people less than what you're worth. And you also don't want to charge people more, because then they can come back at you and say, wait a second, I'm paying you this, and I don't think you delivered it. I ran into that situation. I had that situation with a law firm. I got into working in PC law and with law firms, and then I learned a whole big lesson about it, because I learned that I wasn't an expert in it, and I couldn't charge the same prices as I do with my QuickBooks clients, and the areas where I am an expert, which are, like you said at the beginning, medical doctors, creative professionals, including interior designers and professional photographers. And I also work with a lot of IT people, and we work with wholesalers. Jumping into the legal field was a whole different thing, and I tried charging my same rates, and I wasn't worth it, because there are people that do 100% law bookkeeping charging between $30 and $50 an hour. And for me to charge $60 to $70, I wasn't delivering what they were expecting. And I had to admit that to myself. And I had to make the decision that I have to get out of this area, because I'm not an expert in it. That was a big lesson. It was an important lesson. I mean, it's very rare that happens. It's more common, I think, that I look at my clients and realize, wait a minute, I'm delivering huge value for these people. And sometimes I'm doing it in very few hours per week. And then I have to look at, well, wait a minute, I have to introduce a different kind of billing or value pricing to recognize all the experience that that our firm brings to the table in terms of setting up businesses and advising people on how to properly set up their databases, to properly use them if they're going to have multiple people from their team using them. So yeah, it is this, with pricing, you're doing this checking. You're checking yourself against the market. You're checking yourself against what you know to be true for yourself and your own expertise.
Definitely some great lessons. And I love that you looked at the legal profession and made a decision. I mean, that's what business owners have to do, is look at both sides of the table and determine, is this what I'm great at? And do I want to go in that direction? Because by all means, you could have, sunk your teeth into it and said, this is going to be an area that I'm going to be an expert at and ramp it up. But you decided to leave that to the people who want to be experts there. And you're going to focus back on the things that you know are your core competencies, your expertise, as you say, which is great.
Yeah. It's difficult to be a generalist, which my firm is a little bit. We're not very narrow in our focus, but I realize that we do have to exclude certain types of services, and it just makes more sense to do it that way. It's more efficient. Yeah.
Great. That's awesome. Well, I think it's great because whilst you're not narrow, you are starting to remove some options and really know that you know what you are an expert in. And if you just continue to grow that, it'll be good for your business. Now, I'm going to take it in a different direction here, because I have read in some of my prep notes that you're very proud of the business relationships that you've had with key people over the years. What, in your opinion, are the key factors in building strong win-win business partnerships?
I think the key factors are listening, for one, and I listen to what people say and I take notes. I do that with referral sources or for referral partners. I do that with my clients. I do that with my staff. I take notes. I mean, they're not detailed, copious notes for every single interaction that I have, but I find myself in these key conversations with people sometimes, and I'm grabbing my notebook or their file and I'm making these notes, because people say these really interesting things, and people are quite creative with their language sometimes, and you can really understand who they are as a person by some of the phrases that they use. I mean, it's more important when you're onboarding a client, or when you're talking to a prospect, or when you're having that annual evaluation with a client that you've had for many years. You want to be careful to take notes then, because you'll hear things about, they'll reflect on the past, and they'll make comments about where they want to go in the future. And sometimes I'm asking them directly those questions. What do you feel went really well in the last year? Where are you looking to go? And I'm taking these notes because I find myself going back to them and reading them, and it helps me reframe future conversations that I'm having with them. And I'll read the notes sometimes before I go into the office, before I meet with them the next time, or before I send them the next email. I find it, listening and taking notes is a fantastic way to string together those conversations and those interactions that you have with people and build a stronger relationship out of it. These are people that, I mean, they're not my best friends, they're not my family, and I've got hundreds of these kinds of relationships, but I try to take down the neat little details, the interesting things that they say, and it could be things about their business or their personal life, but I write them down because it helps me get a hook into who they are as a person and what really excites them. And I find that helps them. It helps me build a warmer relationship with them, where I can call them up and say, "Hey, can I have a photo shoot in your office?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, no problem." Or, "Hey, can you write a testimonial for me?" And, "Hey, you're a travel agent. What do you know about traveling in this country?" or whatever. It really helps. Figuring out what really makes people tick is is the key to getting to know them and building that real business friendship.
Wow. I really love that. I mean, when you say hundreds, right, that's a lot of people. And I think that a lot of people would maybe even be intimidated by the fact that you have these stronger business friendships with that many people. I mean, that's a lot of people to keep track of. But what comes to mind is I have a relative that is into hockey cards. And it just blows me away at how much they know at all these different hockey cards, like where there are the condition of the cards. Like, I mean, there's just, it almost seems like hundreds of different variables and all these different people. I mean, there's hundreds, maybe even, I guess, well, there would be thousands of different hockey cards, baseball cards, basketball, like just ridiculous amounts of information. And whilst that's what they're passionate about, is basically having relationships with hockey cards, but it's more than that. It's relationships with the people who trade them and all that good stuff. But you've actually done that with people and, you know, keeping notes and understanding. Where do you think you learned that, or where did you get that passion or desire to actually have that happening in your life?
Well, I think some of it I inherited. My father was a high school teacher, and he was also a librarian, and he was also he also ran the yearbook for many years. He took students to England and France on trips. He was also a municipal politician. So he was one of these types of people that could have hundreds of acquaintances. I think he had thousands actually.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, thousands of acquaintances. And he had these very warm relationships with people. He would do his campaigning, and he would drive down we grew up in a small town. He would drive down all the back roads and visit everybody. And he had been and had tea or coffee at various people's houses over the years. He was a politician for over 10 years. So I think some of it's just an inherited thing. And I'm a little bit more introverted than he is, but I've managed to do it with a smaller number of people. And yeah, the comparison with hockey cards is interesting because I am keeping some vital stats on these people. And then also, you know, I make notes. So every client has a hard copy file folder, and I've got their vital stats written on there. And then I have a printout of a database with that information in there. But I write these other little notes, like things like dogs' names and names of their kids and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just, I guess I just realized that it worked, that it was a way to remember. Like, I think I'd heard in some business book or something that when you meet people, you should write down the things,
yeah.
but, you know, people's names, and make some other notes, something that'll make you remember them. So I've been doing it, and it's been working, and it kind of reinforces itself. It
is definitely I would say a key success factor. And I believe the book that is, I mean, there's probably a lot of books, obviously, 3,000 new books every day printed, but there is a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, written by Dale Carnegie. And I would say Dale Carnegie is the Uber in terms of business and personal relationships. And one of the keys is, and the driver for it is that people are not interested in you. They're interested in themselves. So if you become interested in them, they're going to really like you, right? And so we all love to be acknowledged for things, and we like it when people remember, you know, the names of our children or our dogs or pets or whatever, but they show interest in us. It makes us instantly like them. And so it's whilst we don't want to make it callous and formalized and, if I do this, I'm going to, you know, get that. I mean, I don't think that's the intent. And even the title, I mean, this book was written 60 years ago, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It sounds really kind of callous, but the basis of the book is just be interested in people and do your due diligence to make sure you have a system in place to be able to remember these things. And that's what you've done. You've put a system in place to remember things about people, and you get satisfaction from it. And I guarantee the people in your life get great satisfaction from it, because you're probably, you know, much loved in your both family and business friendships, right? Now, I'd really be interested to know how that relates back to your philosophies around how you manage your staff. I mean, that's other relationships, right? What's that like, and what is your environment like?
Yeah, we as a staff, we have 2 holiday parties, or we have 2 parties during the year, and then I also try to keep in touch with all the staff. So at any given point in time, there's probably 5 people working for me, and 3 of them are at clients' offices. So pretty much every day, I'm texting everybody. I go and look at the calendar in the morning, so between sort of 8 and 9:30. I look at the calendar, see where people are, think of things that might be happening in those situations, and everybody that's not with me for the day gets a text saying, "Oh, I hope things go well at so-and-so's," and then it'll ask them a question either about their personal life, about their weekend, or it'll say something about, "Oh, did such and such happen with the client?" if we were anticipating that something might be going on at the clients. And then, so I'm getting texts back, and I keep track of the people that aren't here by texting, also emails too. I find we like the texts because they're a bit more immediate. And then I have weekly check-in phone calls with at least 1 or 2 staff for about an hour. And then there's the people that are in my office. So every day there's pretty much 2 people in my office as well. And I mean, we're working hard during the day, but we do try to, we're having conversations about what people are doing on the weekend, and their kids and their family members, and the sports they might be playing or movies they might be seeing, stuff like that. I'm trying to keep it friendly. I'm trying to put some humor into our workday as well.
It's a lot on your plate. I think the listener listening right now can get a sense of, there's, wherever they are in their business, to look at where you're at and the things that you're taking on and the things that you're doing. It must at time get stressful for you. It
does. It does. But I think being a parent is way harder. So I am not a parent, but I feel really grateful because having a business has given me a few of the things involved in being a parent. Like I nurture people, I jump in emergencies. Anytime anyone has a problem that can't be, if I can't get someone else to solve it for me, I'm jumping in and dealing with it. And so it makes me realize how much parents do. I mean, I see my brother and my friends and cousins and stuff and what they do being parents. And I feel like having a small business has a small piece of it.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it is a child in a way that needs nurturing and care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you spend a long time at it. I'm going to spend probably 20 years at it or a bit more. The business is going to echo all the effort that I've put into it. Everything that I do is going to show in what gets produced out of this thing. And there's lots of people helping me as well. So
that's right. It takes there's another saying. It takes a community to raise a child, I think is the saying, right? And so I think the more you look at it that way, it's actually a very healthy way of looking at it. From the standpoint of it is not just you, and it's not just the rewards, you put X in and expect Y out. It's not like that. These are all the variables that we're putting into this: love, care, passion, collaboration, and we're doing it. And you're doing it with all these different people. It is a family, right? That's I really get from you, like the way you're running your business is that it is your family, and you're raising it like your family, and not just the business itself, but the other stakeholders, the customers, the referral partners, anybody who's involved in your business is part of that family, and you treat it that way. You treat it with great care and respect. And guess what? It's going to give that back to you.
Right. Yeah.
Most of the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But don't those kids grow up to not do that, right? So you're going to have some bad things happen too, and not to say bad, but not as pleasant things happen.
Yes.
So on that note, when things that are not pleasant happen for you, how do you deal with that?
Well, I usually talk things over with either my husband or my administrator, Sandra. They're my two key people in terms of, because they know all the ins and outs of what's going on with the clients and how I'm selling services and how the business is being run. So they would be my key people. But if a situation comes up with a client, I'm also talking with the primary bookkeeper at that client to get their input. And sometimes I'm called in to solve some issues that come up where the client comes to me rather than their primary bookkeeper, but then I will try to share that situation with the primary bookkeeper, and I'll try to also, if there are any other resources within that client's staff that I think could get involved and help deal with the issue, I will try to do that. If there are any other people, things come up, but what's coming up right now a lot is I have a couple of customers who are going through separations and divorces, and we're having to do a lot of extra work around valuing their businesses for their spouses' lawyers. And so that's happened. I have a lady who's winding down a business because she's getting older, and her sister's husband just had a major incident in his health. So there's always things happening that I get involved with. And I try to bring as many people to the table as I can. I try to break it into tasks and steps so that it can be delegated and approached like a bit of a project. So it's not like, oh my goodness, we have to solve everything tonight.
And so you lots going on, and you could just I can hear from just those few things. There's lots of new things happening, very complex things that are occurring in your business, and it's a pretty big business. And so that must be stressful for you at times. How do you deal with stress?
I go to yoga. Yoga is super important to me. I have to go at least 2 times a week. So one of the times is during the week and another is on the weekend. I try to make it a second weekday yoga class. It's either at 5 or 6:30 down the street. That's just amazing. Yoga is amazing because of the breathing and also the physical fitness. And then I try to see my friends and family as often as I can as another stress reliever. And then also just eating well and also reading books in the bathtub. Those are the big things that I do. That's
awesome. I love that. It's so, just the sound of it sounds, extremely relaxing, but it's one of those things that you would see in a movie or something, the bubbles and the candles and the book. And yeah, that's where you're going when, the pressure's on to unpack it a little bit. And I love actually the yoga I've been thinking about. I used to do yoga rather regularly, and I moved away from it, and I haven't been doing it. And I think it's, for me, I'm inspired actually to get back into it just after listening to you talk a little bit about it.
That's great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, amazing it's amazing for your fitness, and it's amazing for relaxation. And we are better at everything when we are more relaxed and centered. So yeah. I'm going to take that on for myself. Yeah,
funny you mentioned the How to Win Friends and Influence People. I did pick up that book. They actually turned it into a Broadway show with the guy who played Harry Potter. Now I'm not going to remember his name. Daniel Radcliffe. They had in New York City when I got married. When was it? 6 years ago, that show was playing on Broadway in New York City, and I saw it. And Daniel Radcliffe was so amazing, such an amazing performer, dancer, actor, singer. Yeah, so that's when you mentioned it, it brought back a lot of happy memories for me. And
wow. I am trying to figure out how they made that book into a movie or into a Broadway play. So I am interested. I'm going to be Googling that after this episode, because I read that book. Oh boy, it's probably 25, 30 years ago now that I read the book. And it's definitely, if you haven't read the book, listener, it's one that should be on the reading list. It is dated. There's some things in there that maybe could use a refresh, and maybe there are refreshed versions of it. But read it with that in mind, and there's absolute gold, as you can hear from Siobhan's explanation and some of the things she's doing. There's gold in there, and if you can get to the Broadway play, sounds like it's a doozy. But I'm sure Radcliffe brought it to life with his acting skills. But this has been great, Siobhan. Is there any other tips or thoughts that you'd like to share with the community before we end off this episode?
I don't think so. I think, I think we've covered the gist of what I do that help. That I think building the relationships really helps. I mean, it certainly helps cushion the blows, and it makes my day more fun to have these friendships. And friendly acquaintance relationships that I have with the clients. I enjoy being involved in people's lives and seeing them unfold, and it's very gratifying.
Beautiful. And I think that's why you're so successful. You care about people, and it's one of the bottom lines that we say, that in order to be a successful bookkeeper, you must empower business owners. And that's, in order to do that, you have to be passionate about what you do. You have to be passionate about helping them be more successful. And you're clearly doing that. And so thank you for that. And on behalf of the entire Successful Bookkeeper community, I want to thank you for taking this time out of your busy schedule to spend it here with us on this podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Excellent. And we'll put links and whatnot. If there's people that want to get in touch with you or connect with you online, we'll put those links into the show notes as well.
Absolutely. Yep, that's great.
That's great. Well, that wraps another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.